China is slowly becoming a superpower. In just 2 decades, the country transformed itself into the factory of the world. And now, its growing soft power and military capabilities are even threatening the United States of America. Everything is hinting to a direct confrontation between these two giants. With every day, tensions between Washington and Peking are increasing. In this video, we will answer the question why China will win against the United States in the future, and why the 21st century will be a Chinese century. Because even with the biggest military in the world, the US lacks something that makes China unbeatable. But more to that later. Welcome to Dark New World. Over the past decade, China has gradually risen as a global power. For a long time, the focus of observation remained on the economic dimension of China's rise. Under Xi Jinping's leadership, however, China's aspiration to global political leadership has become unmistakable. The enlarged West now faces a geostrategically driven Chinese foreign policy. Amid growing US-China rivalry, China is eager to continue building up its own footprint in the international arena and to become technologically independent from the US. China's role as major trading partner for many countries in the world has provided a significant set of tools to exercise its influence in bilateral relations as well as on multilateral level. Under the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative, China has diversified its economic and political relations, has established trading routes with access to harbors and trading hotspots all over the world, and created a network under which Chinese companies can access and develop new markets. From a Chinese perspective, connectivity has become an important feature in China's interaction with the world, intended to contribute to economic growth processes in previously rather isolated countries and regions. The China story defies easy categorization. Is it fundamentally about economic development, trade, and the complexities of the global economy? Or is it about clashing value systems? Or Beijing's bid to become the world's foremost technological powerhouse? Most accurately, it's all of them. As China deploys an ambitious new strategy to bring about what its leader Xi Jinping calls the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, an aspiration Xi unveiled in 2012 as he vowed to restore China's past glory, it is actively building leverage and cementing influence in realms as disparate as territorial claims, cyberspace, global supply chains, and international organizations like the UN. Beijing's aim, and the fundamental challenge it poses, is to recast the values and norms that define the current rules-based international order shaped by the US over nearly 80 years, so that they more closely align with its own authoritarian system. Consider its use of hostage diplomacy, its disregard for international law and treaties, and its use of economic cohesion in a potential breach of global trade routes. China wields by far the most largest military, with 2.8 million soldiers, sailors and airmen, twice the American number. Yet, China's military was a full million people strong in the 1980s, before PRC leaders recognized that its size actually worked against their aim of developing a modern force. Raw size is deceptive. 2 million of China's soldiers serve in the ground forces, where their primary responsibilities are to ensure domestic order and protect borders, not to project power. Then, too, the Pentagon estimates that only about 20% of those ground forces are even equipped to move about within China. A still smaller number possesses the trucks, repair facilities, construction and engineering units, and other mobile assets needed to project power abroad. In China's ever-expanding defense budget, which has grown by more than 50% in real terms over the course of the 1990s and is to increase 15% this year, there is also less than meets the eye. Most of this year's increase represents a compensation to the Chinese armed forces for divesting themselves of their many business operations, which sap China's military readiness. Even with these increases, China's announced defense budget will still only total about 230 billion, less than 5% of the US figure. And this basic disparity will not change anytime soon. So, why are the United States so concerned about Chinese global ambitions? Militarily, the US continues to retain a distinct advantage. But for how long? If economic development improves a state's ability to produce high-quality military equipment and skillful military personnel, China's abilities to produce a world-class military should be expected to continue to grow at an impressive rate. The country's growing military budget and scheduled production of increasingly advanced equipment are early signs that this will remain the case. But this is not the main problem with China. It is something completely different. It is all about what China stands for. Something that many other countries want to achieve by their own now. China is an authoritarian state. The Communist Party wants to present the country as a country of the future, where the standard of living is improving and people live a happy and fulfilled life. But the reality couldn't be more different. China's rise to one of the top, if not the top tech giants in the world, gave its government incredible tools to control power and influence. China is an Orwellian state. People are under government surveillance 24/7. There are tons of examples for this, and I would have to do a 30-minute long video just for this topic. But one simple thought to explain China is the number of surveillance cameras in the country. 54% of the world's cameras are located in China, which would equate to 540 million CCTV cameras as of 2021. With a population of 1.46 billion, based on the most recent UN estimate, this means there are 372.8 cameras per 1,000 people in China. And then there are the algorithms and closed social media platforms in China, separated from the rest of the internet. And of course labor camps in the East. The CCP's repression of ethnic minorities, of course, is nothing new. But a technique used today, total mass digital surveillance, has only recently become practical. And China obtained the tools for the surveillance state from Western companies, who were encouraged by Western governments to engage with a post-Mao Zedong China that many believed was transitioning to some form of market economy. Economic reforms, many Westerners believed, would lead to political reforms. But when that didn't happen, the economic and scientific engagement continued. The situation we face right now is that this engagement is slowly stopping. The problem here is that the economies of the world are already linked to China, so this divorce will be painful for both sides. We see American policymakers view China in a new light, and beside the dangers of decoupling economies, we will certainly see the forming of two world blocs. And this could lead China to victory. So, now many of you will tell me, Dennis, China has a massive population problem, they are facing so many crises, how should they beat the United States? And I totally agree that China has many problems. Some are so big that they could indeed trigger the downfall of the dragon. But China as a country doesn't have to exist forever to win. To be honest, the Chinese already won. It's not the Chinese economy that beats the Americans, or the Chinese military. No, it's the Chinese model that had already won. The Chinese model of capitalism, state-controlled authoritarian rule over the population, with the help of technology, mass surveillance, and censorship of information. This is the Chinese method. And whatever happens to China, this model, in the eyes of many countries in the East, is the role model for success in the 21st century. And especially in the Third World, China is a viable alternative to the West as an investment source. China's Belt and Road Initiative, sometimes referred as the New Silk Road, is one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects ever conceived. Launched in 2013 by President Xi Jinping, the vast collection of development and investment initiatives would stretch from East Asia to Europe, significantly expanding China's economic and political influence. Some analysts see the project as an unsettling extension of China's rising power. And as the costs of many of the projects have skyrocketed, opposition has grown in some countries. Meanwhile, the United States shares the concern of some in Asia that the Belt and Road Initiative could be a Trojan horse for China-led regional development and military expansion. Under President Donald Trump, Washington has raised alarm over Beijing's actions, but it has struggled to offer governments in the region a more appealing economic vision. Today, even the Europeans try to catch up with similar projects, but China had years without competition, and now they are far ahead. It will be hard for Western countries to find ways to offer alternatives for the Chinese investments, because Western investors seek partnerships with countries that can provide environments in which Western ideals are respected. In contrast, the Chinese don't care about the internal politics of many states. Many authoritarian regimes don't have to worry about demands from their investors. And this leads to my final point, that the West has to give up its ideals. Not that they are real when it comes to investments in the Middle East or Africa, but there was at least some standard. But now, everyone has to invest to stop the influence of the competitor. That means, at least in some part, that the West has to adapt the Chinese system. Yes, you heard that right. In order to be competitive in the world, the West has to be softer on authoritarianism. Many countries that would have been a no-go zone for investors 10 years ago are now a top priority, especially in the situation that the world is in right now. And this goes even further. Western governments are looking closely to China and the way they handle information on the web. And even here, policymakers want to adapt certain aspects of the Chinese model. This process will be dangerous, because now we are heading into times of crisis. And in such crises, the calls for control and security will lead to actions that will be hard to reverse in the future. We will have to give up some liberties, because China, the Chinese model, is winning. It is dangerous, because we face the perfect storm to make these things happen. And Western citizens have to be careful and watch their politicians in the coming years. Let's hope common sense and the willingness to work on freedom will be stronger than fear. But I doubt it. The future will probably be a Chinese 21st century. Maybe not today. In the West, even not tomorrow. But if the world keeps spinning out of control, soon after that. But we have other problems too, for example the energy crisis in Europe. If you want to know how the future of Europe looks like, check out this video. And on the right, you can check out my last video. My name is Dennis. Thank you for watching and goodbye.